Oh man, what a week. Okay,
Absolutely.
so a big event ABAI just happened. Thoughts?
Okay, so transparency corner. Um, I went to ABAI. I presented. I was supposed to present 3 times. I ended up presenting 4 times.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah. My presentations were the first one was a skill builder exercise. They're doing something new this year called skill builders. It's not a workshop. It's not a presentation. It's supposed to be 110 minutes where individuals in there actually engage with the material by doing it. So our skill builder was inner behavior, where we're measuring and recording and changing the frequency of thoughts, feelings, and urges. So we built like an app kind of website type thing where they can kind of scan it and they could, do tap on their phone for positives, and they did 1 minute timings. They were measuring their inner behavior and providing responses across the presentation. And then at the end, they were able to leave with like a behavior intervention plan for an inner behavior that kind of walked them through that. So it's basically rooted in my dissertation work, and it was inner behavior. Second presentation, I was invited to speak about my activism and advocacy paper on my that was talking about the classroom learning screening on how to reduce disproportionality, where students that are black and Latino and brown and indigenous that are sent to special education at disproportionate rates. So I had that paper, and that was about that. I want to pull up a photo that was kind of interesting from that presentation, and I'll do that in a minute. But my third presentation was through the Chicago School. They asked people to come, and I said I would present, and I presented on the conceptual similarities between BST and methodics and other uh, teaching forms, kind of like Anita Archer's "My Turn, Our Turn, Your Turn Again," stuff like that, and that went pretty well. In my second presentation, on my invited presentation, I want to share this. This is me and the individuals that I presented with.
Oh.
Anything stand out to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one of these things is most definitely not like the other.
Exactly. So,
Oh man.
it was me and them, and then after we all presented, which actually, since it was behavior and social issues, and it was specifically the activism and advocacy section, it was interesting. It was like from that paper, so it was interesting to see what they said.
I
They
keep
said,
wiggling my head.
and so they had some good presentations, some fine presentations that were talking about how to improve the world sustainability, improve job, people's access to insurance. This is not autism, really. This is just like workers comp type stuff. And then the other dude was something or other. But then when we got to the questions, Carissa asked a really good question. I forget what it was specifically, but a lot of them started talking about, oh, we need reform. And back in the 70s, we were on a great path, and we need to get back to that. And then one guy was like, oh, we need to have everybody join my Substack and then write a strongly worded letter to the Supreme Court, and then we're going to lay all the letters out at their feet. And he said it's not going to do anything, but it's going to let them know that we're very frustrated and concerned. And after all that, I was like, look, I'm gonna be the somewhat radical one on this panel, and I'm gonna tell you that reform is what got us the prison industrial complex from slavery, because they didn't really abolished slavery, they reformed it. So what people up here are asking is insufficient, in my opinion, to what we actually need for true large systemic change. One dude was talking about using, I didn't say this, but I felt it. One dude was talking about using AI and asking it how we can solve the problems. I'm like, why don't you ask somebody who's black, brown, disabled, or some other way marginalized on how they feel we can change things? You're going to go to AI? Do you know about Jim Code? So, frustrations galore.
To say AI is
Um,
full of biases, full of it.
exactly. So, none of my, I feel like a lot of people think that anything ABA is going to be related to autism. None of my, while there could be use for with people with autism when it comes to some of my presentations, it wasn't targeted at autistic individuals. Um, Now, I absolutely felt conflicted being there. The first day, I presented and I went home. I presented 10 to 11, 50 maybe, and then I immediately just drove home. And
You
home
lived
is,
within proximity, by the
yeah,
way.
30
That's
minutes.
important
Yeah.
to mention.
Yeah. Home was 30 minutes away. The next day, I presented at 8 a.m. I went to go see some friends present, and then I was gone by 12, 1. And then the final day, I had a presentation at 8 a.m. and I was asked to be in a panel on countertransference. And I said yes to be on that panel on countertransference, which most people in ABA have never heard of and don't know what that is. And we discussed that and how it could be harmful for when you're working with clients if you have that counter transference and you don't acknowledge it or address it or somehow functionally and appropriately deal with it. So that was my ABAI 2026. It felt incredibly small compared to previous ABAIs. Back when I was a student at the Chicago school, we either had to go to ABAI in CalABA or we had to write a super long paper. And pretty much everybody just went to ABAI, so they didn't have to write a super long paper.
What a weird. That was on ground, though, right?
That was on ground at the
To be
LA
clear.
campus. I don't know if that's still the rule or anything now, but that was the way that it worked then. And we were like, yeah, we'll just go to ABAI and listen to a bunch of talks. And yeah.
Hmm. What a weird forced choice that was. Because, like, I don't know. I see ABAI as just like a monopoly within ABA. I see it as a corrupt organization within ABAI, or within ABA, and
Hmm.
it sickens me to know that people are basically told, do this or you have to like write a paper. Even at the time, like I feel that that's a
Yeah.
little extreme. It's like, why not just have conference attendance and some sort of verification of conference attendance, but not requiring it to be the monopoly organization within ABA. I don't know. I find that interesting. Now, I'm all about supporting your state organizations. I'm all about
Hmm.
supporting like smaller conferences or conferences that don't platform harm like ABAI does. But yeah, I just find that a bold choice,
And I'm not
especially
sure.
given the harm.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was CalABA or ABAI because it's been a while.
Right.
But I
Or it
remember
had to be
going to
both.
both. Yeah, I remember going to both, and yeah, and I think yeah, that's all I know. I remember going to both, and and I can't imagine me. I was not. I was kind of broke back then. I'm still broke professor, but I
Yeah.
was
ABAI is
broker.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, and even as a student, and especially if it's out of state, you know what I mean. So did I fly? No, no. Some people, one person, I knew somebody who did not fly because they were afraid of flying. So maybe they didn't have to. I don't know. But I do remember going to ABAI. So
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, they'll have, if they're consulting or if, they have a budget for whatever with the organizations they're employed with under ABA as an umbrella, they might sponsor employees or sponsor individuals to go and attend conferences. But Yeah, I mean, if you look at the cost, so let's assume that you don't live near the site
Mm-hmm.
like you did this year. You do have travel expenses, and airfare is very expensive. There's a lot of things going on in air travel. Hotels, ABAI tends to pick nicer venues and nicer sponsor hotels, which also excludes lower income individuals.
Yep.
And they tend to have very high prices for conference attendance. Um, all of this, your meals, your room and boarding, your travel, your conference attendance, and then I think like you have to pay separately for the CEU package on top of that.
Yes.
Um, if you want any sort of like book or supplemental material that you've seen during the conference, you can go to their bookstore and buy it. Um, Maybe get it signed by the author. Like that's a big thing that they tend to plug. But all of this adds up, and if you're a student and you're basically being told go to this one, but like no other conferences are negotiable, that's yeah, that's a odd flex to say the
Yeah.
least. Hopefully, it's not still a thing, but like, yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no idea. From what I haven't heard it be a thing recently. I just
Right.
remember having to go to a conference or having to write a paper and then consistently going to the conference instead of the
Yeah,
paper. Um,
for
Now,
sure.
at the time, going to the conference, what does that mean? Like showing that you paid, showing your ID. Conferences are often big and busy, and if you and somebody else go to the same conference, you might not see each other.
Yeah, especially one like ABEI. It's huge
Yeah,
generally.
yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's another great point because you and I both know that lecture alone is not sufficient in order to teach new skills or to educate people. And so, what is it ABI? Well, it's mostly just lecture based instruction. Now there are workshops, there are interactive, which you do a really good job of integrating. Like I'm going to talk about this, but we're also going to do this because it's
Hmm.
rehearsal and practice, and using that sort of actually effective model. But a lot of the times that I've went to ABI in the past, I just sit there and try not to fall asleep. That doesn't show that I actually gained anything from that conference. It doesn't show my
Hmm.
competency. It doesn't show my skill sets. It's just, hey, I paid money to this very large organization that will use it for bad, bad
Hmm.
things, and to continue to exploit, in particular, disabled people. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the only thing I see as in it. No offense, I know you attended and everything. I just have really strong feelings about ABI, as everyone probably knows at this point. Um, but to me, I just see it as a badge of privilege, where it's like, hey, I paid all this money to do this thing, and f you. Like that's
Yeah.
what I see it as, and I don't know. I just find it really gross. But I'm in a slump right now. What can I say?
No, I get it, and I feel you, and I think that nobody is above criticism or critique. And I have had very conflicting opinions and views about going. I didn't advertise any of my talks really. I put it on my story on like the day of. I was like, hey, if you're going, come see me. But
Right.
I didn't put it on any of my social medias as a post. And I didn't like, outwardly share and send that. Like when I'm about to talk in a week or two, in 2 weeks, and then I'm going to talk again in another 2 weeks. Those I'm going to publicly post and talk about. But this just didn't feel right, and now it has me feeling, especially with the lacklusterness of it all this year. I'm thinking of if I even want to go next year, which I'm right now thinking no. Especially, I'll be getting married and honeymoon, and it's like
Right.
with what money? So,
Facts.
and the thing is, my thing is, I like to think that it's one of the best opportunities for me to share information to actually like get to BCBAs and be like, hey, this is a evidence based, not harmful procedure that I would recommend you implementing and using. But then I have to think, if the platform, if the area, if the cause goes to bad things, then my little bit can't necessarily outweigh it. You know what I mean? Especially with the money it costs, you can never be sure how many people go to your talk, and then they gave me literally the worst times. Like first one was
Oh,
10 a.m., which was
really?
the first time. That's okay. The second one was 8 a.m. On Sunday, so that means that people had already been out the night before. You know how ABAI is.
Right,
And then the
right.
next one was 8 a.m. on Monday, which was another terrible one because usually people are already leaving or they're not waking up.
Right.
And then the last one was 5 p.m. on Monday,
That was my
which means
guess.
everybody is gone.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
we're all
like
out.
these are literally the worst times to present at. If anybody's ever been to an academic conference,
Yeah.
people, go out the night before or whatever. So if it's
Uh-huh.
an 8 a.m. talk, like, they should abolish 8 a.m. talks, to be honest. But like, it was just like, man, y'all are really giving me the worst. And that kind of treatment just lets me know, like, am I valued? Is what I'm saying valued?
Right.
And even when I was like saying like, oh, I feel like this behavior and social issues talk is important and valuable for people because of what it extends the science could do. It's like you put us at 8 a.m. Like
Right.
that. What does that mean for like where are you
Rest of
putting other
the
people? You know. So
yeah,
it's like,
that's concerning.
yeah,
I know like they have a lot of navigation to do as far as scheduling and all that because of the amount of people there and attending, but that's a really good point. And I think that I don't know that it was intentional. I'm sure it had to do with like, oh, we have to have so much separation of time between talks or whatever so that you can like get to what you need to and spread it across days and whatnot. But like, part of you has to wonder, is this who's getting the best times? Like, is it
yeah.
the people who are like kissing the butt of ABAI, the ones who have done ongoing leadership within ABAI? I'm sure that's the way it's prioritized. And if we look at history, we know that that doesn't include people who generally look like us. So,
Yeah.
once again, we are continuing to platform the values and ideals. And I want to be explicitly clear here. I've had to make hard decisions in the past as far as where to platform my voice and what I have to say about ABA and education and that sort of stuff. And there are definitely times where we might have to present for an organization that we don't agree with fully, that we don't have similar values, whatever the case may be, but we kind of have to weigh that cost. And so I ultimately know that this is an individual decision for each person in their context. I'm glad that there were presentations there, like yours, for instance. And, I know that there were a lot of good. That's one thing I miss about ABAI is like, I could see precision teaching talks. I could see sustainability talks. I could see all of these
Mm.
topics that are very important to me and I'm very interested in because they were available to me. And so that kind of sucks. And so every year around ABA, I kind of grieve that loss because I used to go and I used to enjoy it. And now I don't have access to some of those. So I think that that really speaks to, yeah, there were some good talks there, but what are we doing to amplify those outside of those spaces? So that's kind of the main point. Like, I've said no to organizations before because I'm like, you all don't share my values. And like, that's hard because as an academic person and as someone in academia who relies on all this for our evaluations and our appraisals, to say no to something like that is really hard to do because we have to list all those things on our stuff, our Vitas, and like,
Exactly.
it's such a dilemma because I don't want to align with them and I don't want people to see that and get the wrong idea. So it's kind of talking to your piece about, I didn't put it on social media. There's some shame with that, I'm sure. And that's
Hmm.
what I feel.
Yeah. And even more so, there's shame of being in this field.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
there's shame in being a BCBA. You know what I mean? There's shame,
Yes.
like, and also there's frustration with the fact that they don't stand up to the values they supposedly uphold or say they uphold. It's kind of like we hold these truths that all men are created equal. Meanwhile, we got people that we've enslaved. It's giving those vibes,
Yeah.
and so long as the culture is as it is, the environment is not likely to shift significantly, which is why I'm more going the route of education, special education, precision teaching, and behavior science, because the behavior analysis of it all has so many. I have so many critiques of behavior analysis. I always tell people, like, you think you have critiques? I will introduce you to new critiques to this, because you don't even know, like, especially when you're in it and you've had to take tests and learn about all this stuff. You like,
Hmm.
that ain't right, and this is what you're telling people. So, you know, it goes so deep, and especially as a disenfranchised, marginalized person, a black person, it people. One of the frustrations I get is how people say, "Oh, behavior analysis has history in XYZ, so therefore we should never use it for anything now." And it's like, okay, we can have those critiques that it has these problematic histories, but then you overlook, like, education and special education and their history, and gynecology, and the hospitals and medical services that still have disproportionate rates of black women dying during childbirth, because they still be like, oh, black people don't feel pain. Like, it's like
Right.
you're concerned with this one area, but you don't see the greater white supremacy culture harm that is across so many others. And then you're chastising me for using what I can to help individuals. Like, you don't even know. So all that's frustrating. And then, like, and I don't even, like, I get that comment so many times on Instagram and TikTok. I don't even at this point respond. You know what I mean? It's like, I, I don't think that they know a lot of times, and they don't really understand. And I don't think that they're willing to hear or understand really anything, because they're coming from a place of hurt, of harm, which is understandable. And it's not something that I can communicate with them about in the vehicle of a comment section.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And we've talked about context, and like that's so important when we're talking about especially harm in ABA and how we use strategies. And context is very rarely conveyed on social media, in part because of the time limits and clip length requirements and stuff like that. So it's tough, and that's the thing. Like, it's really hard sometimes to separate feeling from fact. And in advocacy spaces, you know, there's a lot of feeling involved, and not being able to compartmentalize, that's something I do really well. It's my
Hmm.
feelings are over here, but my facts are here.
Hmm.
But not a lot of people do have that skill set. I do recognize that as a strength of mine. And so when people are acting out of feeling, sometimes I have to step back and say, okay, you didn't get that memo, so we need to actually work on this. But that's something that we do. We will champion having those conversations, and that's a huge difference between like what you do on social media versus what like Naraba does on social media. But part of our focus is to help encourage change within ABA and to say, hey,
Hmm.
there is a way we can do this, but that's not the function of your social media. So I definitely understand the people who do make those comments, but you know, you are absolutely welcome to respond to those or not respond to them. Not responding is also a response.
Yeah.
However, it serves the needs of the discussion. And like you said, there are definitely times where that conversation can go nowhere, and it's, you know, the best thing we can possibly do is demonstrate what we're doing, and then you can make your own judgment calls.
I wholeheartedly agree. And sometimes I will respond, and I'll just try to, like, validate their feelings.
Right.
And but, like, one, it's like anytime you go viral, it's like impossible. It's incredibly
Oh
difficult
yeah.
to respond to everybody. And then it's like they'll keep coming in. It'll be the first
Mm-hmm.
time somebody's seen that video, even if it's been a year.
Right.
Um, but I I don't know a good way yet to communicate how I feel and what I think about ABA to somebody who has frustrations, especially because frustrations are so different for different people. And like some people like think that, oh, everybody that hates ABA says the same thing, and it's like, no, there's such a wide range of concerns, which goes to talking about the amount of concerns that there are. And
Completely agree.
my yeah, and my thing is, I don't see my particular platform on social media to be just about ABA. And I never wanted it to be. I, in fact, started making social media content because I wanted to talk about precision teaching.
Yeah.
And then,
Which
like,
falls
I,
under the umbrella of ABA, and so therefore you get kind of.
yeah, even though it was born outside of it. And then I started getting popular because I was talking about Black history. So that's the first thing that people cared about me talking about.
Right.
So I do that. You know what I mean? So like, I also talk about ABA because my literal master's in applied behavior analysis, and I am a BCBA. But and behavior science informs my worldview, but my understanding of ABA is so different than people who's actually in ABA because I can see
Mm-hmm.
exactly when there was a split between what is ABA and what became of ABA and what was behavior science.
Right.
And so many people just are not taught about that, so they don't know, or they don't seek it because they don't know. You know what I mean? I only know because of my precision teaching heritage, which is like, no, we split off. Where ABA went, we went the other way. We stayed with behavior science, and we started like looking into. They started looking at things like assent, and they started looking into things like making sure the learner is always right by making sure if the learner is not doing what we want, then we're doing something wrong. Like all that. Whereas ABA was like, hey, there's this guy named Lovas. He may be a Nazi, but maybe he could lead the way. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, that's it's so true, and it's so funny because you and I have a very similar perspective on ABA, and I feel that all the time, and it's so hard, especially with services primarily focusing on autistic individuals. Being an autistic BCBA, I think that really speaks to that internal conflict that results in an annual slump for me in this field.
hmm
I want to be clear when I talk about me being in a slump or in a depression, it has nothing to do with my job. My job is wonderful. I love my job. I love what I do. It has everything to do with ABA and the field and my complicated feelings within ABA. And that's not to say that, like, I'm leaving the field tomorrow. Like, I stay because it's important to me and my values to help influence change in ABA. And because it's not going anywhere.
yeah,
And obviously, like, our numbers are growing, and the only thing that I can really rest on sometimes is not having the reinforcement of knowing that I'm impacting any of that change. Occasionally, some of it will trickle in, but, like, for the most part, it's a very tough space to be in, and that you feel like a traitor. You feel like the shame, to go back to that earlier conversation of, like, man, I'm an autistic BCBA, and I'm a part of this harmful system that continues to, like, what is the term I'm trying to think? Is it appropriation for, like, taking something and calling it your own? Because, like,
yeah,
precision teaching, for example, public positive behavior intervention, all these strategies, we tend to, like, say, oh yeah, that's a part of ABA. Oh yeah, that's ABA. And
hmm
to me, that's always been gross. And it's like, we need to give credit where credit's due. If something developed out of special education, we need to give credit for that.
exactly,
Stuff like that. And so that's coming from this field, that this large organization, ABAI, continues to perpetuate that culture of. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's really hard to separate the culture and the organization that basically says, here's what you need to teach your students, here's what our credentialing involves. Unless you do this, we're not going to credential you, and then you're not going to have any students come, and your program's just worthless.
hmm
Like,
yeah,
it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So, like, I appreciate and I acknowledge that discussion that you've kind of opened up on that. It's very true.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I was thinking, I have an answer to this, but I want to hear your answer before I talk about it. Do
Okay.
you think, do you think that you and or other autistic BCBAs, because there is a growing number,
Hmm.
some that number kind of fluctuates because some the burnout. Do you think that you've been able to make change, good change? Have you seen that change? If so,
It's hard because right now I'm not giving myself a lot of credit for anything, and that's just part of my own stuff I have to work through. Um, it's nice though because now that I've been diagnosed, I understand what I'm going through and why I'm going through it. But for a long
hmm
time, I just kind of raw dogged my way through life and trying to figure out this advocacy space. Um, I think sometimes those pieces do come. We tend to call them glimmers, where a student might say, you know what, nobody's ever told me about having to get assent from my learner. I've just always been taught about getting consent forms signed by parents or guardians. I really appreciate you bringing this up to me. Like, those happen. So, in a small scale, micro level of analysis, maybe. But as far as large scale systems change, I couldn't answer to that. And the thing is, I feel that because autistic people are not always in positions of leadership, especially within autism organizations, how can we create that change? Because we're
hmm
not being asked for our opinions. We're not being asked to consult. We're not in those positions of leadership. There's still not good board representation of autistic professionals, or if it's something that, I mean, I run myself ragged, I'll be honest. Like, I do a
hmm
lot of things that I probably take on that I shouldn't, but that is once again matching my values, and I feel like if I don't do that, I don't know who will. And that's a really long way to try to answer that question, but it's really hard to know. So feedback is very valuable to me. I know it's valuable to other autistic BCBAs, I know. And we don't get enough of the positive feedback. We get a lot of the here's what sucks about what you do.
hmm
um, Anytime I present at a conference, I get met with very polarized comments because what I say is uncomfortable. And I even preface with that, and I say, some of you are going to rate me a 1 out of 5, and because you can't give me a 0, and I have
hmm
to accept that, and I can't
hmm
internalize it because then I won't
hmm
keep going.
hmm
So it's either a 5 or it's a 1, and like it's usually a 50-50 split. And I can guarantee you the people who give me like the 1 or the 0 look exactly like all the people who are on the panel with you because they don't
Yeah.
want to hear it.
Yep. Yep.
That's my answer. What about you?
So I think that, and this is just my view, because I think that I naturally seek out people who are doing the work, the critiques,
Yeah.
and like, that stuff. So, what I've seen is people like you, like Neuraba, like Neurotactical on Instagram,
Hmm.
like Audie Autist. I think is how you say her profile. Like the individual who hopes to get on the podcast with us, which I think will be
Hmm.
great. We could talk about having them be a guest. There's a lot of people who are autistic, who are BCBAs, who are in the space, who are also making content, who are critical, who are incredibly powerful. And I see a change in the neurotypicals because of it. I see a lot of change because there's a lot of people who only become BCBAs because they have a brother, a sister, a child, a cousin, a friend who is autistic, and that made them want to do this. And then because of their lens, as there is somebody that I love, that I care about and care for, I approach this differently, and it needs to
Hmm.
be done better. All of those individuals and yourself, I see making change. Now, progress, unfortunately, is incremental, especially in
Right.
the, structures and systems we live within currently. So, but I think that for me personally, I see those changes, and what I try to do is I try to lift those people up. Also, people like Carissa, those behavior people who are
Yeah.
neurotypical, who are consistently advocating and criticizing the right things and the right people,
Yeah.
and the wrong things that they're like showing, like, hey, this is bad, this is wrong, and there's value to detecting and describing problematic systems and
Yes.
policies and attitudes and decisions. People too often don't see the value in that, but some people just don't do anything. And
Right.
doing nothing is also being complicit as well. So I think that
Yeah.
there's this one quote that I want to share that I think is apt, from the
Oh,
Boondocks.
the Boondocks. I love that show.
He's like, Granddad, what do you do when you can't do nothing, but there's nothing you can do? And Granddad says, you do what you can.
Oh, such a good show. I need to watch that
Yeah,
again.
yeah, same. So I think that
So
that's
good.
where I am, and I hope that's where you are. I know it's hard and taxing, but it's like you do what you can, and
Hmm.
when you do what you can, sometimes it doesn't always land. But for me, when I make content that I'm like iffy about, that I'm like, I don't know how it's going to be received, sometimes that's the best received content because I'm
Right.
willing to take the risk. I'm willing to go out
Yeah.
there and say the thing. And I'm not the only one thinking it. I'm just the first one to say it, or one of the first to say it, or one of the few to say it. And it needs to be said. If we don't challenge power, then power goes unchallenged, unchecked, and it remains in perpetuity, at least until that power is checked and changed.
Yeah. I think that that conversation can go to any demographic, by the way, that is marginalized in their identity.
Hmm.
It's not just exclusive to autistic BCBAs. You talked about like Carissina's behavior. Um, love, love, love that advocacy space. And so, we could be talking about race, we could be talking about disability, we could be talking about, gender identity. It could be
Hmm.
literally any piece that doesn't fit the mold of your panel. I'm just going to keep going back to your panel here, um, because the picture was just so, oh man, it's so clearly, yikes,
and,
minus
and
you
th-
on the panel.
no, and that's why, like, unfortunately, sometimes it's important to be in those spaces, but also
Yeah,
it's like, how else can one be effective without being in that space? Also, there's
right.
intentionality in that as well. So, because if I wasn't there, what was
It
it
would
going
have
to
been,
look
that
like?
was my
And
thought.
And you know what? It'd just be like any other panel that's at ABAI right now. Let's be honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Most of the time, that's what the panel looks like. I just happen to be there, and I'm an aberration, in these respects. And the stuff that I wanted to say versus what I said during that question and answer section, I was like going like this, and I was like,
you had to mask a little.
yeah, a lot, because I was like, I know that what I say will stop me from being the palatable black man that they see me as at that moment, that people see me as on Instagram, that is very calculated. And there's a lot I have to say and a lot
Unfortunate.
I think. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that doesn't, there's a lot of scripts in my draft that won't ever see the light of day, in my drafts, that in my on my phone, that I don't know how to say appropriately. There's critiques that I want to make, and things I want to say that I don't know how to say effectively because I can already see the comment section.
Yeah, that just really hurts as somebody who like has to mask a lot. And I want to be clear, this isn't white woman tears. This is just high empathy for that situation, because when I do say those things and I am harsh, and I will use my privilege, because I will unmask a little more in those presentations, because I'm like, you know what, I'm white, so I can't be the aggressive black woman because I'm white. But then I become the angry autistic person, and like you're too blunt and all this. And so it's like, how can we speak out in the standard that you will hear us, in a way that you won't immediately label us as unsafe or identify us in that way, but yet we're still not being heard when we jump through the hoops? Like, that's
Hmm.
not okay, and that's what we're fighting, and it's so hard. It's just such a battle. I just hate that everyone is tone policed who doesn't fit that mold of professionalism, as Ray Miltenberger pointed out on LinkedIn a few months
Yeah.
ago now. So, yeah, I'm sorry we don't fit into your old white man Christian neuronormative mold of how we
Straight.
present things or talk, but
Yeah.
it hasn't worked for us. So, like, that's why we go protest. That's why we get loud. That's why we have to, say these things in that way, because you're not hearing us. So, I just want to kind of mention the fact that if anybody ever feels unsafe to say something in a space that I'm sharing with them, feel free to come to me. I will say it. I don't care not to say those things. I'm
Yeah.
kind of at this point in my life where, like, whatever, what do I have to lose?
Hmm.
Because I'm already probably marginalized by the community I'm in a part of. Minus autistic people, I feel like I fit in real well with them. But, you can come to me and I will say the thing. And if you're not safe to say the thing, I will say it for you. So
Hmm.
hopefully not, you know, butchering what you have to say, but I will definitely be that space for you if you need me to be.
Yeah. And I also feel like I'm the kind of person I've been told by my cousin, like, Jared, you always have something to say. And I do have something
Yeah.
to say. It's just, and I will select my words carefully. But at a certain point, I feel like it might be necessary to use my male privilege to get
Mm-hmm.
across what I need to get across, especially when, like, yeah, yeah. So I, it's very frustrating, seeing the way the world is and seeing the way the world treats the disenfranchised, and then like continues to reward mediocrity, and one class and genre of individual over everybody else. And it's just like I've always had this thing about fairness. Like even when I was a little kid, I would get like extremely upset, and I would always make sure that things had to be fair for everybody. So that hasn't left me. And I see the inequities and the inequalities, and I'm just like, not on my watch. And then if I'm gonna make somebody, I will suffer a fool, and I have been known to do so. And you're gonna at least get this chin wagging, if nothing else.
Yeah. I could not agree more. And that's like, it's really hard to be so socially justice driven because you want to fix all the things, and like there's literally fires happening.
Hmm.
This isn't just ABA, it's the world.
Hmm.
So like you're seeing all these fires and you're like, okay, well, I have some ideas to put out the fires, but I can't do it. And like I'm only one person, and like, but that's why building a community is so important, and knowing some of those safe spaces and advocacy. And I kind of need to tap into some of those right now. I'm not taking my own advice, but
Hmm.
tapping into allies, tapping into people who match the behavior of the verbal repertoire that they're speaking, and really continuing to amplify each other, I think, is how we can get through these times. So, yeah, I love all those points.
I agree. And a few things that I want to do. I want to uplift something, and then I want to challenge something. So one, I'll uplift is say that one of the good things that came out of ABAI is I was able to meet somebody who I've kind of seen on social media, and they've kind of seen me, or they've seen me because I'm visible. And they're fairly close. They're like in Oakland, which is not too far from me. And I'm going to start working with them in their school. And then they were really excited. They're like, "Oh, we got a man who has a PhD and he's black and he's gonna come
Yeah.
and he's gonna work with us, and to be with the students." And I'm so excited. I feel like I haven't had the opportunity to actually be with the kids, with the students, and make a difference like that. And that came out of ABAI. which is great. Um, but I also think that I've learned this about myself, and I think that it's a male thing that I have to work on. A lot of times, I don't think things through fully. I kind of go and I do without thinking things through sometimes. And I think that they may have been one of the cases when it came to me deciding intentionally to go to ABAI and to present, because I did submit a presentation. The other three I was asked to be part of, but I did submit a presentation as the person to do it. So before we went on camera, you said, "Do I mind if you challenge me on my on my ABA participation?" I want to say, I think that you could, if you have any other additional challenges or questions, I think that it would be important for you to ask me here and now, even if I wasn't like to ask those questions, like if I wasn't your friend or your colleague or whatever, to ask, because I think that that's only right. I shouldn't, get softball questions. I should be, appropriately interrogated for my crimes.
Yeah, and I respect that. The problem is I have a hard time coming up with novel questions. so, the main thing is just kind of like understanding the decision making and like weighing the advantages versus the disadvantages of attending. And so, you already spoke to that and kind of deciding that, well, I don't have to pay for travel, so that helps reduce the cost. But also, like I have to attend, and like there are all these things like the Judge Rotenberg, I don't know how you say it. I like to say Rotten because I
I
think
do
it's
too.
rotten. um, there were one, two, three, four, five different individuals from the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center represented at ABAI this year. Every single year, by the way, there are multiple people. So this isn't a standalone, one-time sort of situation. In fact, in the past, the Educational Center has sponsored and given significant amounts of money to the conference itself so that they could have a table in the expo center that people could go and get fidgets from and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just kind of weighing those options. Well, do I want to give money to an organization that continues to have a voice? And that's the issue with ABAI, because we both teach students who are doing
Mhm.
research, and we want them to present their research. ABAI is a space where they pretty much accept you as long as your proposal falls under ABA. And so they basically won't say no unless it's just completely not on topic with the discipline. So it's a great opportunity for students to get their work out there and be able to talk about it and do all that. And so that kind of sucks because that's available. You can submit anything you want to within the topic, and it's there, and you get the opportunity to present. And that's something that not a lot of people are rewarded, especially marginalized communities.
Yep.
So it kind of sucks because that is a good opportunity, but also they let anybody speak, as evidenced by the Judge Rotenberg Center having multiple
Mhm.
presentations. Our state organization, I say our state, I now live in Missouri, but when I lived in Arkansas, I still do ARC-ABA board stuff. And one thing that I really, really love about that community space that we have with our board is that they have been really receptive to how we can move forward as a field and how we can kind of model, here's what we can and we won't tolerate. And one thing, whenever we have people apply for being sponsors for ARC-ABA, I would see, and we've talked about this before. I know it's like a white woman privilege stance on neurodiversity, but I don't like the puzzle piece. I personally don't think that a symbol for autism should just be in any company's logo. I find that also kind of gross and overlapping. But one thing is, if your organization title, your logo, any representation of autism whatsoever on your website is harmful to the autistic community in any way, shape, or form, we say no. We don't want your sponsorship. But if you have an alternate graphic or if you have an alternate stance to take, we would be glad to share that one. And it has resulted with some organizations basically saying, oh, they don't want our money. It's like, no, we don't, because it's dirty money to us. So, like,
Hmm.
why aren't organizations like ABAI, and this is a call to action for ABAI, make a stance on that shit? Like, why are you just allowing it to continue to happen? Why can you not stand up and have, like, some guts and say, you know what, we're not going to tolerate that behavior any longer. We're not going to hear about your punishment procedures, Judge Rottenberg Center. We can do it as a state organization. Why can't you do it, considering how much money you siphon from people to attend their conference? So, yeah, I mean, I know that, this kind of started talking about, like, your stance on everything, but, weighing those pros and cons is kind of where this all came from. Once you know, you know. And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of cost benefit ratio.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I made a video about this recently. There's no magic moment where these companies, these big organizations, big systems just magically grow a conscience or magically have a moral shift
Right.
in their behavior. It's because there has been pushback and there's pressure to make change, and then the change happens. Slavery wasn't ended in Europe, in Great Britain, or here because there was like a moral awakening. No, there were specific pressures put on the systems to make the change. The Pope just said that slavery
I
was
saw that.
bad, and they apologized for their involvement in slavery. Now, in 2026, is it that they just had a moral awakening? No. There was a UN passing of slavery, the transatlantic slave trade being the gravest crime against humanity. That passed. That's pressure. Also, the new pope has Creole, Black, African blood in his veins somehow for whatever reason or history. So that also happened. So it takes all of these different pressures to make actual change, whether actual change or what may be performative,
Yeah.
because I mean, if he's saying he's sorry and they did wrong, then okay, how do you right that wrong? You need to have justice. You need
Right.
to have reparations. Oh, scary word. You need to have,
Oh no.
restitution for the harm. So, that's kind of where ABAI needs to go. They need to start with an apology and admission of wrongdoing, and then move towards how can we work towards improving the our stance, our situation, the way that we work with autistic individuals, especially since they're so prevalent. I haven't seen none of that. I have not seen any attempt. I have never heard of a desire, a drive, movement towards being like, hey, we're not looked at well. We should do something to work on that.
Because they
Not
don't have to.
once.
They're making
Yeah,
money. So as long as they're making money, their bottom dollar is secured. They are not going to. That's the thing. That's why I'm like, hit them where it hurts, folks.
yeah,
Capitalism is what we're operating under. So what
exactly.
thrives in capitalism? Money. Don't give them money.
And
So it's hard.
I agree. I just got a question. We're
Shoot.
pretty far in this episode, so I don't think that people made it this far if they hear this. What is it about white men and not wanting to apologize for things? Like there
I
is such a
know.
thing. I will not apologize. I will not. Like
I
it
don't
really
know.
costs you nothing to give an
I know.
apology. Like it's
I
just so
know.
interesting to me to see like apologize for what? It wasn't me. Like damn. Like I didn't realize I was, taking a piece of your soul by you having to give an apology. Like how shitty of a person are you if you can't give an apology? Like I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's a pride thing. I know that it's definitely socialized. But I thought
Yeah.
it was more. I was kind of overgeneralizing it to like men, but it sounds like that may not be the case for black men or men of color. But once again, everybody's individual
Yeah.
circumstances are very different based on your environment and blah, 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 blah. But I thought it
I
was
think
more
that
of a
it's
men thing.
It probably is. I mean, I see a lot of men, I see a lot of black men that can't apologize or are willing to apologize when they seen wrong. But I think that that's because in black culture, we have accountability and we hold each other
Right.
accountable or we exclude you from spaces. Like there was a whole thing called the racial draft in Dave Chappelle's show where it's like, oh, well, we don't long, like, we will take your black card. We will exclude you from
Oh, I
spaces
remember this now.
because we don't believe that you're representing us well. You know what I mean? And now, ironically, Dave might be one of the
Yeah.
individuals that we're trading.
I
Off
was
the
gonna say
top,
this
it's
didn't age well.
yeah. It's Stephen A. Smith and then Kevin Hart and Dave. They can go, and there's others, of course, that are doing additional and more worse and more harm. But uh,
Yeah.
back to the topic, you know what I mean? I think that there's that shame that the community will put upon the individual. I just don't feel like that's a thing in white culture. Like
No.
you can, you know,
No.
be Donald Trump and there's not a large swath of white individuals that will provide the necessary shame to have social contingencies make you change your behavior.
Right. And I feel that, and I'm married to a white man, and but he is kind of an outlier. Is he will apologize, and he is good about apology, especially if I just like. It's kind of at this point in our relationship where I can just kind of look at him and he knows he's
Hmm.
done messed up.
Yeah.
And then he'll be like, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
like, not that I'm like the voice of
Hmm.
guidance or anything, but I definitely think he's a little bit of an outlier. Now, all of my exes that I've dated in the past who are white men definitely had an issue with apologizing and being wrong in general. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. I think it's an intimidation factor because
Mm.
when you're in that position of power, this is just how I picture it. Now, I've read some books on this and I'm just kind of piecing together different things from various social stratification books that I've read. But I think that when someone is in a position of power and they are challenged by that power, making an apology demonstrates that vulnerability. And so it's an
Mm.
act of, it's almost correlated to incompetence. And so, it's kind of like the whole, oh my gosh, what if they find out I'm a fraud? What if they find out
Hmm.
I'm not actually good at this thing that I've been amplified for doing, that I'm actually mediocre at?
Yeah.
And so I wonder if it's connected to some of that piece. But yeah, it's definitely seemingly more prominent with white men in particular. And now that I kind of think back to my
Yeah.
dating history, yeah, totally.
And of course it's not all white men like you were both
No.
saying. But I mean overwhelmingly when it comes to the ability to cause harm upon a large amount of people, it seems that that's
Or
the
call it out.
demographic. Yeah. And I mean and you know what? There are definitely easy ways to change that, you know?
Hmm.
Be a good force in the world. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But if that were to happen, then things would change.
No, totally.
I feel like I've had a lot of negativity to harp on. There's one piece of positive thing that I want to get out there. Um,
Yeah, let's finish
over
on
the
some
last
positives.
Yeah, over the last week or two, I have been able to support students. I'm always meeting with students, supporting them through their
Hmm.
applied project, theses, or dissertations. I was able to give the opportunity to three students to be like, hey, it sounds like what you might benefit from is using this. And it was a standard acceleration chart to display, describe, to show their data. Of course, I think it's a better way to do it. Of course, that knowledge is behind lots and lots of education and research and reading and all that stuff. Um, and I made that website, jaredvan.com/SCC, to make it super easy. So they just put in the data and then it goes out. Two of the three took me up on that opportunity. Those two enjoyed it, and one of the two even emailed me thanking me and saying that they found something in their data they wouldn't have otherwise found because of using the standard acceleration chart. And by
Love it.
golly, I'll take a win.
That's amazing. That's a huge win. And anytime we can convert someone over to precision teaching or standard acceleration charting, I think is a good day. That
Yeah.
is not something that I've had happen recently, but I have had a lot of wins with different students as well, and making progress on these projects that are so daunting that they feel they're never going to get through. And I was able to hood 2 dissertation students last at the beginning of this month. So that was a big accomplishment. Like, I was with these students both almost from the start of their projects. And so that's like a almost 2-year commitment, folks. And it could be longer depending on how
Yeah.
quickly or not quickly you move through it. So, we get to know each other real well by the end of it. And making 2 doctors, especially because these weren't like white men,
Hmm.
was really empowering. And both of my students are neurodivergent as well. And
Hmm.
it's really empowering to be able to say, hey, now you can join me as a colleague. Now you can join me as a fellow doctor, and we
Yeah.
can take over this field that has so many wrongs that we need to right in it. So, yeah, not to steal that thunder, but
No, congratulations.
we're
That's
doing those
amazing.
wins. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I think the standard acceleration is always amazing too, so I need to get more students on it. And I need to also remember to start referring students to your website, because I forget that it's so seamlessly correlated with like using the chart and the training that can happen with it.
Yeah.
So plugging that website, go use it. Go,
Yeah.
send your students to it. Make it an assignment, for Christ's sake. Like, just like make it a part of your courses.
Yes, please. And also, I'm gonna go, Robin. If you can, you should. I recommend it. Going to the Standard Acceleration Society conference, which is in Reno, Nevada this year. It's always
Oh,
in the beginning of November. Um, So it goes East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, West Coast. So this
mm-hmm.
time it's West Coast. But it's always a blast. Amazing talks, amazing presentations. And if it's your first time going, they do a workshop for free where they teach you how to use the standard acceleration chart. So they give that to everybody. And then they also have mentorship opportunities where like they literally have like speed dating mentorship type thing. They have me being
Awesome.
one of the mentors now, which is so weird to me. So I'm like with some of these like legends in the field, and then it's me. And I'm like,
I mean,
what do you want to ask me?
that's the thing. Like, the hero worship in ABA is so interesting. But yeah, you're a part of that now. Like, you've published
Yeah,
on precision teaching, so you have been grandfathered into that role. So you've got to
yeah,
accept it and own it. And I'm
yeah,
sure, I'm picturing the people who I know of who are precision teachers, and you being in that role is huge because
yeah.
it's representation.
Agreed, agreed.
I love it. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out and see um, if I can make it out to that for sure. I don't see why not, but I will definitely have to come. And hopefully, anybody who's listening will also attend.
Yeah, and
All 10 of
also,
you.
yeah, they party hard. Let's just say that. So it's funny because they party hard, and the next day they're up talking about the most high level stuff.
Yeah,
That it's like how, but
rally.
while you're looking into acceleration.org, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, comment, reply to a comment, make a friend, tell a friend, share with a
Make an
friend.
enemy.
You make an enemy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who
That's what
knows?
I'm usually here for. It's fine.
Thank you all for watching.